Okay.
Hold it right there.
Well, dinner at Rose's.
Happy birthday.
Where's my wife?
Right there. Hi.
Where'd she go?
That's a different ride back in there.
You think you'll wait a while?
The next time you're in it too. There's a whole program. After the
Now it's cheap.
I do. Good. Happy birthday.
Oh,
Yeah, you
man,
can
now that's
come and
cute.
sit on it.
Happy birthday, Steve.
Thanks, Trace. How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Hey, Steve, we're sorry to wait. Our family just won't be the same.
All right.
Yeah, well, you got this. As ready as I ever could. She gets a little older.
Kind of
Here, we
weird.
got some blankets. She just wants to sit on the grass. She knows the dress being Thank you. I want to see the color. Oh. Or is that not what you use? No. That was a crap. I was just curious.
Yeah. Hi, Greta.
How did you do it? Your kid.
Why do I come out of Rose's and there's this hearse out there? How are you doing, Bishop? Are you going to bury me? Or?
Yes, you're buried.
Steph, are you behind this?
No.
Wow.
Yeah, she loved that a good. You don't hear never. And she's going out with her friends. So she needed that. She needed a change. And really fun people meet a lot of age. Seems like her age, right?
We're here to honor Stephen Forbes Hardison, and it's our privilege to do so. Steve, how do you feel?
Dinner was great. When we drove out, something must have happened.
You got real sick.
We got hit.
Amy looks so down and sad today.
Amy, you got to put the sunglasses back on at least. I mean, you've got the white. We're real happy here.
Well, we do thank Steffany and Lindsay and Blake and Clint, Amy, for this chance. It's good to be here doing this because there are some wonderful things that can be said about a man that we can honor and that we are grateful for. Let me just share a couple of personal things. Steve and my mother have a few things in common. It's both their birthday today, and they're about the same age. No, I'm kidding. The last I looked, they were still alive. Today, I was just at a wedding over at the temple grounds, where there was a reverence, and it was a good experience. The family wanted to find a setting where we could say some things that the children can say about their dad, who they love dearly. That a wife could say something about her husband, who she dearly loves. and friends could be here and participate. And so we're fortunate, we're lucky to be here. And as we think about Stephen and his life thus far, we just found out, just on a personal note, that my wife's mom has terminal cancer, and they said might not be here long. And it's good to be here in this setting where Steve can hear some of these things. And he has blessed the life of so many people and doesn't let anybody else know. The masses don't know about that. But we're very grateful for him, and much can be said. And I was just asked to be brief and introduce things. So I'll go ahead and do that. What we'd like to do today, if we could, is we'd like to begin with a word of prayer, Blake, and then after that, the program will proceed. Amy will say a few things. There's going to be a musical number by the Hardison children, and then or we will all join in, whatever, and then we'll have some other things that are spoken by each of the kids. So, Blake, if you'd like to start with that prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that we could all be here to celebrate the life of Stephen Hardison. Thank you that we could all know him and have good experiences with him. Please bless that we can all have a good time and we can all be happy and cherish this time that we have. Thanks for the people that set this all up. I say this in Jesus' name.
Amen. Blake, that was a perfect prayer. Amy, could we turn the time over to you?
Do the sunglasses look better, Mike? Okay,
You're looking a little too happy for me.
You know, this is probably the only time I could do this with not, with being really happy and excited. So Steffany, this is Steffany's brainchild. This is something that Steffany wanted to do, and she may say something about it, but Steve all his life has always said, I think funerals are such a waste, we need to do it while they're alive. In fact, he tried to pull this together for my mom, and I said, sorry, I don't like to do big events. And so it's a good thing we have Steffany, because she was willing to do the big event and pull this all together. And Steffany asked me to say a few words about Steve's life. So I just thought I would highlight a few little things. I'm not going to go through a full life story, but I thought maybe I'd share some things that you don't know about Steve. Some of them you may know. He was born August 14th, 1955 in Bitburg, Germany. His father was in the service, and he was the biggest baby born up to that point in the hospital. He was 11 pounds 8 ounces. 11 pounds 8 ounces. So he was really a big baby, but he's always done things in kind of big ways. When he was 5 years old, his mother left his father to get the kids out of an abusive situation and moved to Clearfield, Utah. His growing up was not the easiest. If he said it was a good day if he came home and there was a nickel for lunch money, but more often than not there was not a nickel. He said he would love it if people would invite him home after school because he could get something to eat. And so, he never had anyone that was there to go to any of his ball games because his mother was working very, very hard to try to support 5 children as a single working mother in the 60s, and that was no easy task. And the thing that's so remarkable about this is that a lot of times as our family will go on vacations or we'll go to a store, we go buy school clothes or whatever we do, Steve will always say, yep, just like dear old Roy did for me. And everyone laughs and everyone says, oh, Dad, and we've heard that, about the snow getting higher each year. But he really has done an amazing job to provide things that he's never had. He rarely misses one of the kids' games. And he is an extraordinary father, an extraordinary husband, and he has done so with never having had any modeling or really great experience from it as a child. Some of the things you may know about Steve, but that you may not know about Steve, is that he is so generous. He is generous with his time, with his means, with his love. Things not know. One of my favorite stories about Steve is we were coming home one night, and at certain times of the year, at least there used to be this homeless man that would walk up and down Gilbert Road. And you may know the road is really rough there, and it's not graded very well. And one time we were driving down, and Steve said, "Pull over." And I looked over at this man who could possibly be dangerous, and I said, "No." And he goes, "No, yes, pull over." I pulled over, and this was wintertime. And Steve looked at this man, he goes, "It's pretty cold out here, isn't it?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You don't have any shoes, do you?" The man goes, "No." Steve took his shoes off his feet and handed them to this guy. He had not planned it. These were not, the pair of shoes that he never wore, that he didn't like, that he would have given away anyway. These were whatever shoes he happened to have on his feet. This is a man who will often walk through the grocery store checkout and buy the people behind him their groceries. We have gone out and stayed at a hotel as we have been traveling, and he would go to the housekeeping. His mother earned her career as the general housekeeper of a hotel, and he has had a lot of empathy for single working mothers. And he has gone to housekeeping and asked him how many people were in their department, and when he told him, he'd give him enough money to take everyone out to lunch that day. And those are the kinds of things that Steve would never tell anyone. And he lives an extraordinarily generous life in everything he does. He's generous with people. He gives love and encouragement. He spends hours with extraordinary people contributing to their life and always leaving them more able to go out and get what they want than before he had been with them. I have seen him give and give and give. He lives life passionately. If there is anything that could be said of Steve, is that he is passionate. And he loves with all of his heart. He loves people so readily, and he does so much for them that he is just fun to be around and to see the enthusiasm with which he lives life. I couldn't ask for a better husband. He has always supported me in whatever I've said. I've maybe shared this with some of you. After the first year of my teaching institute, and my director asked if I'd like to teach another year, and I said, "I'll need to talk to my husband about it." And I went home and I said, "Steve, they want to know if I want to teach some more." And his face kind of fell, because that meant those were our lunches, and it meant he took on a lot more responsibility and a lot more picking up the edges of things at home that I wasn't getting done, and I was a lot busier. And he looked down, and then he looked up and he said, "My life is about making your life work. So whatever you want to do, I will support you in." Well, 5 years later, I'm still teaching institute, and he is still picking up all of the edges of things that I don't get done. And that's who he is for me. Is no matter what I'm up to in life, he's there. He loves me. He supports me. He is my best friend. We talk and talk and talk and share our heart and our lives together. And I am grateful that at this moment I can tell him in front of people who really matter to him and that he loves, what a wonderful husband he is, and how grateful I am that this is just the midpoint instead of the end point of acknowledging his life.
Yeah, thank you.
I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Come up closer.
So we can hear you.
That's what you want to hear.
Okay, ready?
There is beauty all around when there's love at home. There is joy in every sound when there's love at home. Peace and plenty here abide, smiling sweet on every side. Time does softly, sweetly glide when there's love at home. Love at home. Love at home. Shine the sun. Sweet sweetly glide. When there's love at home, there is beauty all around. When there's no one home, there is joy in every sound. When there's no one home, peace and plenty here abide, smiling sweet on every side. Time does softly, sweetly glide. When there's no one home, no one home, no one home. Time does softly, sweetly glide. When there's no one home.
I don't quite know that I can do my father justice when I describe him. How would one go about describing someone who means the world to you? Well, I'll do my best, but my father is kind of like skydiving, in that no one can explain the rush you feel from jumping out of a plane, and no one can adequately describe the greatness of Steve Hardison. In either situation, it must be experienced for yourself. I have come up with a few adjectives that I feel resemble my father most. The first is that he is selfless. In my father's own eyes, his well-being comes second to each member of my family. Without thinking, he will give up his plans to spend a day with my mother or any of the children. He attends basketball and baseball games or other events that don't particularly interest him so that he can be there to support us. He cares more for our happiness as a family than Steve Hardison is also kind. He continually recognizes us on our accomplishments or anything else. Telling us how handsome or pretty we look is not rare around our house. His constant recognizing gives me confidence in who I am. Another thing I love about my father is that he loves my mother more than anything in the world. He is a great example to me and my brother on how to treat women and our future wives. He treats my mom like a queen, opening doors, pulling out chairs, and lovingly caring for her. That my parents love each other is one of the things I'm most thankful for in my life. The last thing I'm going to say about my father is that he is the best. I know every kid says this about his or her dad, but I mean it. He's my best friend and I'd rather be with him than anybody. He makes me laugh constantly with his bizarre behavior and wacky comments. I love my dad. Well, I did the best I could to explain what my father is to me. But like I said, you can't be told who Steve Hardison is. You have to experience it.
I tried to prepare something, but I was kind of stuck. I didn't know what to say. I've written a lot of papers and things in my English class about my dad. Like, there have been poems and stories that have reminded me a lot about him. So I left them all at school, and so I was kind of disappointed because I knew I could pull from those. So I'm just kind of going off of, I guess, life. And one of my favorite things about my dad is his sense of humor. I can always count on him to cheer me up with one of his classic jokes when I'm sad or discouraged. And no one else appreciates his sense of humor like I do. I think we're on the same wavelength. But I'm so grateful for my dad. He's my best friend. He's the only person who truly relates to me. And we have a really great relationship, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for all the time and effort and the things he puts in to make our life work so that we can be happy. And I'm very thankful that everyone could be here today to acknowledge him. And I just want to let him know that I love him. I'm just going to be brief. I think singing was enough, so. By the way, we didn't practice that. I wrote a story, but I decided I'm just going to save that for my dad, so I'm just going to read you a couple things I wrote about him. A couple of weeks ago, my dad and I were able to spend a week together. In that week, I grew so close to my dad.
He is a great man and I love him. I have realized that I am lucky to have such a great father, but even luckier to have such a great friend. One of my favorite things about my dad is his sense of humor. He is a blast to be around. He can make any situation an enjoyable one. I treasure the times we share together. I am so thankful for all he does for me and my family. At times he has asked me what he could do to be a better father. I have finally come up with the answer. Nothing. He's absolutely wonderful. He has given so much to make his family happy. I admire him for his strength and endurance. I am sure parenting is one of the most challenging experiences in life, and I appreciate that my dad has blazed his own trail and done such an excellent job. I love and adore my father. I'd like to thank him for everything. I love you. Happy birthday and beautiful.
Lindsay is going to sing. No, I'm not. I wanted Lindsay to sing Give Said the Little String because it's my dad's favorite song, but she won't. So we're going to sing it all together. No, I mean everybody. Does everybody know it?
Right next to me.
Mom, will you lead?
Just start them. Give said the little string.
Give, oh give, give, oh give. Give, said the little stream as it hurries down the hill.
I'm small, I know, but wherever I go, the grass grows greener still. Singing, singing all the way. Singing, singing all the day. Give, oh, give away.
I don't know.
I asked a few people to come prepared to say something about my dad to acknowledge him, and so if the people I asked will just take a couple of minutes, and we will start with Vicky and go from there. Thanks.
Well, this is a treat. You know, I love Stephen. His passing, I took it really hard. You know, he always felt like he would never live to see 44. You know, it's been quite a concern for him. And a few years ago, we almost thought we were going to lose him. And I can remember when that was real, what a frightening thing that was for me. You know, I have a lot of personal experiences. I'll share those in just a second. But I called a lot of people to get their feedback and their impressions of Steve. Steve's been working with me for quite a few years, and I actually have some gifts and abilities now because of Steve's coaching that I didn't used to have. I can actually talk to a lot of people that are dead. You know, so I've been doing that. I actually contacted Mother Teresa. Excuse me, a little gnat just went down my throat. You know? Yeah, she came back as a gnat, maybe, I don't know. But Mother Teresa thinks the world of Stephen. Actually, Steve is the only one that ever really threatened her. You know, as far as, because she's kind of known as being the goodest one in the world, and then there's Steve, and so she was concerned about it. But she loves you. Called Bill Clinton. Now, he's barely alive, but Steve really cares a lot for Bill, and they've had a lot of conversations as he's gone through a lot of his trials. I know Steve was there for Bill, and Bill just says he just really felt like Steve, you know, felt like Steve was almost like an intern to him, you know, and so it just meant a lot to Steve. Then I could go on and on with that, but I want to tell you about who Steve is for me. I thought 4 years ago that I had a remarkable life. I have a wife that I adore, children that I love, a successful life and business, and didn't really see that I had a need for anything. And there was an opportunity that I took, and it was a result of actually some prayer, to have Steve come into my life and to actually start coaching me and coaching my family and helping me in my business. And I can look at the difference in my life, and what I thought was a 10 on a 1 to 10 scale in my life, I realized was a 2. I actually woke up and realized how rich life could be. I've looked at the relationship that you've had, Steve, with Amy, and it's been a model for me in how I can honor and treat my wife. I have learned so much from Steve. I've never met anybody with certain qualities that are as strong. I have been with Steve and have seen faith displayed like I've never seen before. Not from anybody. Faith that would actually, being down in the middle of Guatemala at 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, when Steve says, you know, we need to go out and just find this copy of the Book of Mormon for somebody in Spanish, and we don't even know where the city is. There's not street lights. We didn't know which direction to walk. We had to walk by a guy with a machine gun to leave the gates of the hotel that we were at. And we just start walking off. The one thing Steve knew is that we would find that copy of the Book of Mormon for somebody, and we just walked. And we prayed, and the whole experience was miraculous. And everything that I have done, that Nat is taking advantage.
Anybody have a lozenge or something?
Way too long with it. I'm going to have my wife finish because
That's a tough one to complete. Steve definitely is what faith is, because he's in action constantly, and I love him for that. Steve has made not only a significant impact in both Gary and I's lives, but he's also made an impact in our entire family. He's spent time with our children, made a difference in their lives, and taken away from the time that he could have spent with his own family to make a difference in them. And I really appreciate that. One thing I did want to share is sometimes at funerals, you know, they tell stories about people, so I wanted to tell a few stories about Steve. He came one day and picked up my 4-year-old Christian, and brought Amy's cute little BMW over the top off, and came up to the house and got Christian and took him down to Bahama Bucks and made him just feel like he was the most important person in the whole world, and then brought him back. And ever since then, my 4-year-old has Steve Hardison be his absolute best friend in the whole world. So we were on an airplane about a month or so ago, and there was a man who was sitting by Christian, and Christian just very, very talkative, and he asked Christian what his name was, and he said, "My name's Christian, what's your name?" And the man said, "Well, my name's Steve." He goes, "Oh, really? That's my best friend's name." He goes, "Oh, really? Well, how old's your best friend?" He said, 43. He goes, 43? He goes, "Does he just have you hang out with him because that gets him attention?" "Oh, no. He shaved his head to get attention." So I just want Steve to know that he deserves all the attention in the whole world. That I was talking to someone the other day, and they said that a good friend of theirs had lost their spouse. He was driving down the road and suddenly was killed in a car accident. And the wife was at peace because she was able to say, "You know what? I knew my husband knew that I loved him more than anything in the whole world. And I absolutely love my husband more than anything in the whole world, but I would not want Steve Hardison to pass through his life not knowing how much I love him. He really has altered the course of my life for the greater. And I really thank my Heavenly Father almost on a daily basis that he's come into my life and that he's a friend. And so I just want you to know that I love him.
Know that the only thing that's better than the coaching that he is getting is to have Steve in your family and get it free. I also wanted to mention Steve's generosity to me. He has given me so much in his life, in my life, that he was in his family, and I really do appreciate him. Several years ago, this trip that the Geetzes alluded to, he invited Kent and me to go with him. And Kent said, "I just don't like to go to South American countries." He said, "I just don't want to go." And I was so excited. I said, "Oh, are you sure? I just want to go so much. I want to go so much." Nothing else was said about it. And Christmas morning, when we opened our present from Steve and Amy, here were 2 tickets to the Guatemalan tour, and of course couldn't refuse a free tour to Guatemala. Who could? And so it was a wonderful, great experience. And I wanted to say this in connection with the generosity that Amy has talked about. Steve always says we think alike, and we do. And the things that I wanted to tell about Steve was his generosity, and I appreciate that generosity. Now, another trait that Steve has is he's a great bargainer. So even though he's very generous, when we went to the stores to buy anything, he bargained and bargained and bargained. And he told me one time, he says, you can't just walk up and pay the price that they ask for things. He says, they don't have any fun when you do that. You've got to show them a really good time. So you bargain them down to the very lowest, and then you buy it. And that's exciting for them. And I noticed, though, as we left, each of the places that that Steve had purchased something, he gave them a tip when we left that was equally as high as when the bargaining had first started. And he's just very generous. You might look at these two now and think that the romance in their life was just instantaneous, but that's not true. When Steve first started going with Amy, may have been the first or second date, and she excused herself and went into her room and brought out this list that she had made of traits I want in a husband. And she showed it to Steve, and Steve whipped out another list out of his pocket, and here was this list of traits I want in a wife. They matched, so what could they do? That was just it. Now I do have one unresolved situation. At first I was going to say it was a regret, but I'm not sure I really regret it. But unresolved situation. When Amy and Steve were first dating, very first, and Kent was playing in a golf tournament right over there. And I was following him around and watching him play, and Amy and Steve came over following him, watching him play. And his partner, Carl Sandberg, if any of you know him, came up, and I said, oh, Carl, this is my daughter, Amy Blake, and this is her friend, what's his name? So from then on, Steve has been known in our family as what's his name. And I'm afraid I don't know if from that day until the day he died that he ever believed I did it as a joke. But I really did it as a joke. And I appreciate him so much, and he's a wonderful, wonderful son-in-law. You can imagine what it's like.
I want you to know I'm serious, I didn't put what's his name on there.
She wouldn't let me. I put it on your birthday card.
All right.
I love you. Thank you.
I didn't put it on there.
Well, what Steve is to us, our bags. I was trying to figure out what bag to put his present in. And first off, he's a little boy, so we thought about the little sailboats because he's always skateboarding or doing something else. And then we thought about the motorcycle era. And the headbands. And then the sophisticated suits, and he's always so dressed up. And basically we decided that he was the perfect age. But he's also, more than that, he's an angel. And the angel bag is probably what represents most to us for Steve. The list is long. I'm sure that now that he's in heaven, which is where I'm sure he went, that he's a home teacher. And for us, that's how it started. And it never ended. About 8 years after he started, and he'd been released for 6 years, he still was home teaching our family. And like the rest of you, he was generous with his time, and he was generous with his love for our family. And as a single mother and an only child, we presented an interesting challenge for him. And one of the best things that he did is bring his angel into our life, and Amy became very, very quickly my best friend. And I'll be brief, and I'm not really very, I'm not good at expressing a lot of things, but the reason that my son is on a mission at the moment is because of Steve. And he's serving so full, and just like Gary and his wife were mentioning, well, sort of like, we're like family, so we got it free. But we held on to that home teaching thing, and when David was having a struggle trying to decide whether he really was willing to give up his time to go on a mission in full-time service of the Lord. I had reached the end of my ability to communicate to my child all of the reasons that this would be a good option. And so I snagged Steve at church one day and I said, you know, I want you to come by tomorrow night. I won't be home. Take my son and do something with him. Steve said, well, what do you want me to do? And I said, fix him. And everybody wants somebody to fix their teenager, I'm sure. And Steve did. And I don't know exactly what Steve said, but when I got home the next night, I had a son who had spent time with the bishop and had filled out his mission papers and had made a commitment to take 2 years out of his life to commit himself in service to someone else and to a lot of other people. And I asked Steve what he said, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders and said he did what he was told to do. And I asked David what was said, and he said basically that Steve had promised him that if he would go on his mission, that his mother would have a chance at being married and sealed in the temple. And since I just married a non-member, that was a stretch. And he is now a member. My son knows that that's because he made the option and choice to serve. And I was out in the mission field and spent the day with his mission president, and he told me that in a personal interview with David that what Steve told him became the issue as to why David had chosen to spend his time in that way. That's a small, it's a huge example to me. It's only one of a million examples of what Steve has done. And it's hard to talk about Steve without talking about Amy. But they're angels in my life, and they're angels in my family's life, and especially my son's life. I love you.
No, thank you.
About the same. Is that a tattoo on his chest?
It must be one of those rub-off.
Oh, let's see it.
Quite a few years ago, I lived in the peripheral ward in Utah, and I became acquainted through Steve's grandmother and grandfather because I was their home teacher. And the grandfather, he was 90 years old, and he was quite slow in his the things he did, and so I would go over there every once in a while because he wasn't able to shave himself, and he called me the barber. And they would tell quite a few stories about Steve's mother. I would hear different things about her. I was married, and my wife was had a terminal illness, and she was dying with cancer. Steve came into our ward, he and Amy, and they were such a live wire and such a love. My parents were living with me at the time, and they used to sit near the front, and they always came by and spoke to my mother and father, and they just thought so much of Steve. A few months later, my wife did die, and one morning after we got out of a priesthood meeting, there was Steve waiting at the door, and we started walking down the hallway, and he said, What is your plans? I told him nothing. He had something up his sleeve, you know, Steve. He has ideas of things, but I later found that he had, you know, Steve, about his goals. If he sets a goal, he can accomplish it. He's remarkable at that. I just marvel at how he can accomplish goals. But he had 6 goals. One of them was to get his wife, his mother, a husband. That's one of the goals that he had. And so I happened to be the one that happened to be his mother's husband. We were sealed together in 1978, and Steve and his sister, his 2 twin brothers that have passed on, and there was 5 of us there that day that were sealed as we were married that day. It was very, as I looked into Steve's eyes, I always remember the great love that he had for me and seeking me out to fill that position. I feel very honored. And I always felt so close to Steve and Amy and their children. They were so loving and kind, and Amy taking into the Blake's family, and we're sharing many Thanksgivings with them and special occasions, and I appreciated them in my life. Things like that for me. Steve is someone very special to me, and very, I just love him, appreciate him and his family, and so grateful for them in my life. And,
Is there anybody else?
See, my wife knows what I'm going to say, so she was holding me down. She really didn't want me to come up here.
Check that hairpiece.
Now, poetry is the essence of simplicity. And so I wrote a haiku for Steve Hardison, and I've had to alter it after I've heard some of the things you've had to say about him. So it doesn't quite rhyme as well as it would have. Generous, passionate, persistent, intelligent, flatulent.
That one on the head. Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and end now, and Dennis is going to, this is our son-in-law, and Lindsay's future husband.
Oh.
And we're going to go ahead and say the prayer, and then we have some refreshments.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful that we could gather here today. Please bless the refreshments that will nourish and strengthen our bodies, and we're thankful that we could know Steve Hardison and thankful for his life. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys.